In Kuwana City, Mie Prefecture, Japan, Azusa just finished a date with her boyfriend Sumito when she received a call from her friend Kanae. Watching his girlfriend's lively demeanor while on the phone, more vibrant than when she was with him, Sumito felt a twinge of helplessness. But he also knew that in Azusa's heart, her friend Kanae always took priority over everything. Kanae is a photographer whose daily work involves carrying her camera onto the streets to capture moments worth documenting in life. In her viewfinder, there are playful scenes of children sweet-talking their mothers for snacks, as well as images of girls sharing secrets on a hot summer day. Encouraged by Kanae, Azusa became a wedding planner. Even though she has been working in this industry since graduation, some clients expressed doubts because of Azusa's unmarried status. For example, a young couple she met that day had the mother of the groom clearly state that only married planners understand how to organize a perfect wedding. This blunt skepticism made Azusa feel both angry and deeply frustrated. Is being unmarried really a fault? But thinking of her boyfriend, she couldn't help but let out a long sigh. Sumito still seemed immature and unstable, even managing to injure himself while installing a simple earthquake brace. At this moment, Kanae's presence played a crucial role. Whenever Azusa felt lost or wanted to back down, Kanae would always offer encouragement, her eyes filled with admiration and affirmation for her. No matter how much grievance Azusa had, talking to Kanae helped her regain the courage to move forward. A warm scene of a mother and child interacting nearby made Azusa involuntarily smile. Kanae quickly raised her camera to capture the moment. On the way to the station to drop off Azusa, Kanae mentioned that she would be going to Osaka for work the next day. She also talked about her father, describing him as being like Hachiko, always punctual, leaving and returning home at the same time every day, even taking the same train. Thinking of Hachiko, Azusa recalled an interesting tidbit. Although the statue of Hachiko was erected after his death, he actually coexisted with his statue for a period during his life. Azusa bet Kanae that if her father showed up on time at the platform that day, she would treat Kanae to a meal. To verify the bet, Kanae deliberately stayed at the platform after seeing Azusa off. Until her father Yusaku appeared after work, she took a selfie and sent it to Azusa to prove her words were true. Needing to rush home to pack, Kanae left quickly without chatting much with her father, but before leaving, she specifically reminded him to help sign for the mail sent from Osaka. Azusa thought this was just a brief separation, and Yusaku also believed that their daughter would return home soon. However, that night, a sudden car accident took Kanae's life forever. The spring sun shone brightly, and cherry blossoms fell with the wind. Sumito wanted to share the beautiful scenery with his girlfriend, hoping that Azusa's mood, which had been low due to the loss of her friend, would improve. But nearby newlyweds taking wedding photos found him to be a distraction in their shots, and before Sumito could find a good angle, he was asked to leave the scene. On the other side, housekeeper Noriko stood at the door of Komichi's house, hesitant to enter because she had heard that the elderly Komichi was difficult to get along with. After taking a deep breath, Noriko knocked on the door, began to clean seriously, and tried to minimize contact with Komichi. Passing by a piano room, she noticed an old piano and, worried about accidentally damaging it, asked Komichi for her opinion. Komichi merely glanced coldly and warned Noriko not to touch the piano room. Noriko thought the piano was just a collectible, since the piano cover was covered in dust. But what she didn't know was that, over a decade ago, Komichi would play this piano every day at 6 p.m. At that time, Kanae, still a high school student, was often drawn to the sound of the piano, lost in the melodies near Komichi's house. After finishing work, Noriko couldn't help but complain about Komichi's eccentricities to her niece Azusa on her phone. While she was speaking, a couple dressed in black mourning clothes walked past her. This couple was Kanae's parents, and it had been exactly 49 days since their daughter's unexpected passing. Kanae's mother, Tomoko, had just completed the 7-day memorial service and was staring blankly at her daughter's photo after returning home. Yusaku received a card sent to Kanae from the children at the Osaka Sunshine Welfare Institute. which said that the sakura mochi and rice crackers Kanae sent were delicious and welcomed her to visit again. But the date on the letter was yesterday, and Kanae had been gone for over a month. How could food be sent? Lost in her grief, Tomoko didn't think much of it and assumed it was just a prank. However, Yusaku recalled that Kanae had instructed him to sign for mail sent from Osaka, but he had never heard Kanae mention the Welfare Institute. Yusaku contacted the director of the Sunshine Welfare Institute, Masaru Hoshi, to inquire about the details. Masaru Hoshi quickly responded and shared with Kanae's parents the untold story of Kanae. In the autumn of the year before last, Kanae had visited the Welfare Institute for the first time with her colleagues, and her colleagues had pressed the children on sensitive issues. To make up for the harm caused by her colleague, Kanae especially ordered a large cake for the children that Christmas. Until last year's Girls' Day, Kanae visited again to take photos of the children, gradually building a deep bond with them. In May, she sent rice cakes. In August, watermelons. And this March, she sent cherry rice cakes and rice crackers, prompting the children to send thank you cards. As for how Kanae, who passed away in February, was able to send gifts in March, it was because she had ordered these foods along with the cake last Christmas. The cards were not a prank, but rather the children's heartfelt sentiments towards Kanae, representing the warmth she left in the world. Masaru Hoshi invited the two to visit the welfare home, as the restroom was filled with photos taken by Kanae. Though it seemed strange, Kanae insisted on displaying her work in the restroom. Before meeting Kanae, Azusa's impression of restrooms was cold and lonely. When she first transferred schools, she was often bullied by classmates due to her single-parent background, and was frequently forced to hide in the restroom stalls, feeling anxious. After seeing Masaru Hoshi off, Tomoko organized her daughter's belongings and charged her daughter's phone, which had been turned off since the incident. Immediately, multiple messages popped up on the lock screen, all from a contact named Azusa. The content mostly consisted of daily trivial shares, warming weather, food experiences, work problems, etc. Though she didn't reply, the messages continued for dozens of days, as if Kanae had never left. Looking at the screensaver photo of Kanae with another girl, Tomoko vaguely recalled that Azusa was Kanae's high school classmate, but Azusa was not seen at the funeral. Through these messages, Tomoko understood that Azusa, like herself, had not yet moved on from the grief of Kanae's passing. Tomoko's guess was correct. Nearly 2 months after Kanae's death, Azusa still couldn't accept reality. Seeing Kanae's smile on the screen, she felt unbearable pain. The only thing she could do was to deceive herself, sending messages daily pretending that Kanae was still there. As soon as Azusa joined the company, she was urgently called aside by her supervisor. The pianist originally scheduled for the Kobe couple's golden wedding anniversary event she was in charge of could not attend due to illness. On the other side, Noriko came again to provide service, specifically cleaning the restroom, which was outside her work scope, winning Komichi's favor. While chatting, Noriko learned that Komichi had been learning piano since she was 3, but did not dare to ask why Komichi stopped playing later. When Noriko visited her niece Azusa that evening, she casually mentioned this matter. To her surprise, Azusa's eyes lit up upon hearing it, as the golden wedding ceremony was in need of an older pianist. Komichi, who is over 90, seems to be the ideal candidate, but thinking of Komichi's reclusive personality, Noriko still hesitates. The next day, Noriko insists on visiting Azusa. After learning of Azusa's request, Komichi does not directly refuse, but recounts a past event. During the height of World War II, at just 15 years old, she was asked to play the piano at a farewell party for young men heading to the battlefield because of her talent. Since then, Komichi gradually distanced herself from music, resenting that she used music, which should heal hearts, to send young men to war. Even now, recalling this, she cannot help but choke up, believing she is no longer qualified to perform in front of others. Seeing this, Noriko repeatedly apologizes, but Azusa recalls an experience. Since the moment she saw Komichi, she was convinced that Komichi was an outstanding musician. Azusa moved here with her mother during high school, and being a single parent and new to the area, she had no friends and often faced bullying. One day, a camera shutter suddenly went off in the bathroom, and Kanai appeared like a ray of light, dispelling the gloom in Azusa's world. Holding up her camera, she warned the bullies not to act recklessly, and then grabbed Azusa's hand to run away. The two burst out of the bathroom, running across stone bridges, fields, and alleys, finally stopping beside a courtyard. At 6 p.m. on a summer evening, with the sun still up, the piano music drifting from the house cast a dreamy hue over everything. From that day on, Kanai became Azusa's best friend. They came here every day at 6 p.m. to listen to music, spending spring, summer, autumn, and winter together in the melodious tunes. It was only at this moment that Azusa realized that the one playing the piano and healing her and Kanai was the Komichi grandmother in front of her. Azusa believes that Komichi is not unqualified to perform and is indeed very excellent. Although Komichi still refuses the request, after Azusa leaves, she sits down at the piano. Initially, playing at home was meant for atonement and to comfort the spirits, but unexpectedly, the music inadvertently brought happiness to the two girls. A warm current surged in her heart, and Komichi opened the dusty piano lid, playing that familiar piece once more. At the end of the piece, she changed her mind and called Noriko to help find the high heels she bought at 60 and to customize a dress, determined to return to the stage in her best condition. After all, this is a passion she has held since she was 3. She cannot truly let it go. Azusa's experience gave Komichi the courage to understand that her music is not a curse, but a remedy that can bring happiness to others. Meanwhile, Azusa's boyfriend, Sumito, arrived at the Fukunaga jewelry store. Recently, he browsed the store online and was attracted by the exquisite rings, gradually developing thoughts of marriage. Despite Azusa clearly stating at the beginning of their relationship that she did not intend to marry, Sumito still hoped to build a family with Azusa. Sumito noticed a special display case in the store, showcasing not jewelry, but simple children's toys. The store owner, Fukunaga, explained that it was set up to fulfill his grandson's wishes. To celebrate the resolution of Azusa's work issues, Sumito invited her to dinner at a high-end restaurant that evening. However, Azusa could not feel happy, as this was the last place she had dined with Kanai. She recalled Kanai again, remembering the photos in the welfare home's bathroom. Though not professionally composed, they were full of genuine emotion. Sumito was surprised that Kanai had posted her works in the bathroom, and Azusa couldn't help but laugh, saying that Kanai was indeed a unique person. In Kanai's view, although the bathroom was a private space, it was also an excellent place to quietly feel the warmth of the photos. After returning home, Azusa stared at a photo on the table and fell into memories. It was the work that won Kanai her first award, with Azusa as the main subject. Had it not been for Azusa's encouragement, Kanai would not have had the courage to enter the competition. At that time, Kanai suddenly fell backward, and Azusa hurriedly caught her. From that moment on, Kanai knew that Azusa was a friend she could rely on for life. Kanai promised that no matter what difficulties Azusa faced, she would always stand behind her to support her. This promise made in high school was one that Kanai kept until her passing. Whenever Azusa thought of giving up, it was always Kanai who pushed her forward from behind. Now that Kanai had passed away, Azusa felt as if she had lost her support and was confused about her direction. She messaged Kanai again. "Without Kanai, I really don't know how to move forward." But Azusa knew this was just a delusion. However, the next second, the message showed, "Read," and she was instantly stunned. Who had seen the message? Could it be Kanai? That evening, Sumito felt complicated emotions at a colleague's engagement party. He knew Azusa resisted marriage due to her parents' failed marriage, but he believed she should not live in that shadow. Seeing the happiness of his colleagues, Sumito felt envious and longed for a future with Azusa. After the party ended, he took the initiative to contact Azusa. Since Azusa was going back to her hometown to visit her grandmother Ayako the next day, they agreed to meet before leaving at noon. Upon learning that Sumito wanted to take her to the jewelry store to look at rings, Azusa immediately became alert. Faced with his girlfriend's resistance, Sumito did not say more. But at the station farewell, he called out to Azusa, hesitating to express his feelings. He wanted to say, "Let's get married," but the train doors were about to close, and Sumito hurriedly boarded, swallowing the words back down. Ayako was excited to meet Azusa's boyfriend, even more diligent in preparing dinner. Compared to her grandmother's excitement, Azusa felt more helpless. Sumito should have been at work, but impulsively came along, seeming immature. While Azusa helped her grandmother prepare dinner, Sumito assisted in installing summer bamboo curtains for the doors and windows. Ayako believed Sumito was responsible, and since machismo was no longer in vogue, gentleness and thoughtfulness were qualities of a good partner. However, the shadow of her parents' marriage deeply affected Azusa. She did love Sumito, but because of that deep love, she feared repeating the same mistakes. As the three were about to have dinner, the elderly neighbor, Liang Jiang, suddenly burst in, crying that her house was on fire. Sumito immediately ran to put out the fire, instructing Azusa to fetch water, while he soaked the cushions with water from a vase to extinguish the flames, successfully controlling the fire. Sumito returned to his grandmother's house only after dark, and Liang Jiang's son came to thank him. Ayako jokingly said there was no need to be polite, as they were old neighbors for decades, and helping each other was only natural. She sent Liang Jiang's son off with a word that Azusa did not understand. The three, finally hungry, sat down to eat, and Azusa recalled Sumito's performance during the fire, surprised that he was not as unreliable as she had imagined. Curious about the word her grandmother had just mentioned, Ayako explained that it was called mutual support on the road. People in the world help each other to move forward, but it is not a transactional exchange of favors. Azusa still did not understand. If there is no expectation of return, wouldn't that make one a doormat? Ayako shook her head. Not seeking a return does not mean there is no return. When you help others, you also benefit, and one day you will discover that reward. Before bed, Azusa rarely praised Sumito in a message to Kanae, thinking he was more reliable than she had imagined, and perhaps she should reconsider some things. Ayako lay down beside Azusa, placing her hand on her back, indicating that Sumito was trustworthy, encouraging Azusa to try bravely, and promising that she and the old house would always be her support. The next morning, Sumito said goodbye to Azusa and Ayako as they returned home. After getting off the train, Sumito shared a funny story. He was used to taking the same train, the same carriage, and grabbing the same handrail every day. There was also a strange uncle who did the same. Although they had not spoken, they had become familiar faces. One day after work, the uncle fell asleep on the train, and the next stop was where he needed to get off. Sumito felt embarrassed to wake him directly, so he pretended to accidentally drop his book on the uncle's head just before the stop. After the uncle woke up, he got out of the car and surprisingly thanked Sumito through the car window. Sumito felt very awkward and changed carriages the next day. Azusa laughed heartily upon hearing this. Seeing the atmosphere lighten, Sumito took out the marriage registration form he had prepared in advance and handed it to Azusa. Although it went against their initial agreement, he sincerely hoped to marry Azusa and give their relationship a clear future. Azusa was startled by the sudden request and asked Sumito to put the form away, but she did not immediately refuse and promised to think it over seriously. After returning home, Azusa immediately messaged Kanae to vent about Sumito's proposal at the station. Tomoko, on the other end, couldn't help but chuckle at the message. On the day of the couple's golden wedding anniversary in Kobe, there were both elderly guests and grandchildren brought by their grandparents. The small models in the gift bags caught the children's interest. At the same time, Komichi appeared in a gorgeous gown under the spotlight. She walked to the piano, returning to the stage she had left for decades, and placed her fingers on the keys. Thanks to Azusa's story, Komichi's music was no longer confined to her home or mourning the deceased. She brushed away the gloom in her heart, donned a dazzling gown, and offered sincere blessings to the couple who had been together for half a lifetime. At this moment, Tomoko and her husband Yusaku arrived in Osaka. They went to the pastry shop frequently visited by their daughter, bought some white cakes, and took a taxi to the Sunshine Welfare Institute. Yusaku noticed that the driver's last name was quite fitting for his profession. The driver mentioned that Yusaku was the second passenger to notice this surname, with the first being a young female photographer whose destination was also the Welfare Institute. Tomoko instantly understood that it was Kanai. She reached out and gently stroked the empty seat beside her, feeling as if her daughter was accompanying them to the Welfare Institute. Following Kanai's footsteps, the Goda couple arrived at the Welfare Institute and saw their daughter's works in the restroom. The originally cold and lonely space was filled with warmth due to the beautiful moments captured in the photos. Looking at her daughter's smile in the photos, Tomoko felt both sadness and pride. Though the deceased could not be brought back to life, her strength, hope, and kindness lived on in these photographs. The Goda couple's visit was not only to remember their daughter, but also to give Kanai's insurance compensation to the director, Masaru Hoshi. Yusaku believed that if their daughter had not passed away, there would be no such compensation. Since she was passionate about charity during her life, it would be better to let this money continue Kanai's good deeds, as if Kanai had never left. The children invited everyone to eat white cakes, and seeing his wife show a long-lost smile surrounded by children, Yusaku felt a bit more at ease. These days, Tomoko has been feeling down. She worries that her wife will have a hard time getting out of the shadows, but fortunately, the children's smiles have healed her. Yusaku asked Masaru Hoshi to continue sending the children's greeting cards, addressed to Kanae, believing she can see them. Yusaku once thought the kindness in stories was too unreal, but following the footsteps of his daughter during her lifetime, seeing the children's smiling faces and the harmony among everyone in the sunlight, he is willing to believe that there is still true goodness and beauty in the world. After the golden wedding ceremony, Azusa received a thank you note from the couple in Kobe, stating that Komichi's performance made the memorial event more meaningful. Komichi also thanked Noriko, saying that without Noriko's introduction, she wouldn't have been able to regain herself. After finishing her tasks, Azusa received a message from Sumito, saying he was waiting at the usual place. On her way to the appointment, she messaged Kanai again, asking if she should continue moving forward. After receiving the message, Tomoko pulled her husband aside after exiting the station to show him the content of the message. Since it concerns the lifelong matters of the girl, she didn't dare to give casual advice. At that moment, Azusa also stepped out of the platform and approached Kanai's parents to greet them. She took out the photo that Kanai sent on the day of the bet, and only then did Yusaku realize. Talking about that day, Yusaku said he was originally asleep on the train, and if it weren't for a young man he met every day waking him up with a book, he would have missed his stop. It was precisely because of this that he saw his daughter for the last time. And because Kanai reminded Yusaku to chat more with her mother before leaving, Yusaku mentioned the interesting story of Hachiko coexisting with the statue to Tomoko when he got home, just as Azusa had said that day. Although it was unintentional, this remark eased the couple's relationship. Azusa recalled what her grandmother said about supporting each other on the same path, remembering the mutual help in the unseen, and finally cried out. Later on the bus, she received a reply from Kanae, which was brief but full of strength. Move forward. Azusa remembered that running afternoon in high school, unable to hold back any longer, she rushed to the park where they often dated. Upon seeing Sumito, she intentionally fell backward, and at the moment Sumito caught her, Azusa knew there was another person she could rely on. She took the initiative to mention the ring shop and their future together. Unexpectedly, the shop was closed that day, and just as they were about to leave, Fukunaga appeared carrying his grandson. Fukunaga said he was supposed to close the shop all day to attend a friend's golden wedding ceremony, but his grandson insisted on putting the souvenir model in the display case, so he had to return. He invited the two of them to come in and visit the shop. Suddenly, a shutter sound echoed from not far away, and Azusa smiled slightly.